Okay, here we are at the invoice page. You can get here via the invoice list by clicking on an invoice or going create invoice in the menu, or you can just select a new invoice here. When you create a new invoice, you want to select a project and a date range for what you're billing for. So that will pull in the timesheets for that invoice if you want to bill based off an hourly basis. So we'll continue this. We need to give our invoice an invoice number. This will pull in the contact from your project. We have an issue date and a due date and a tax percentage. Scrolling down to concept design here, we have a 3% progress on concept design, and that is due to the project list. So let's go into the dancing house. We can see that $1,000 worth of revenue in the changelog. That's what's causing the 3% progress. So if you're already partway through a project when starting Coincraft, you can use the changelog there to pump up the existing revenue for projects. By default, the invoice has a progress line item, so you can type in a percentage progress here, and it's going to update our progress through the project. So we can say 10%, and we can see we're moving from 3 to 13%. Notice the unit cost is actually the phase fee, and the total amount will be calculated based off that. You'll also notice the description changes as we change these values, and that's because when you edit the description, we have some description codes which you can use, which will update based off the line item values. I'll create a reference for all the codes here so you can reference them in the future. You can add additional line items to a stage using the drop down below. You can add timesheets, so that's going to pull in the timesheet from the date range you selected when you created the invoice. You can filter by task. You can filter by billable, non-billable, or variation. You can also add in those line items as all the staff members in a single line item. So if we add a single line item, that will merge all those staff together. We can add a line item per staff member or a line item per timesheet entry. So maybe we'll add a line item per timesheet entry. It'll bring in each of those timesheet entries like so. It'll also pull in the notes from your timesheet entries. It'll also pull in the notes from your timesheet entries, which you can edit. This is pretty useful in case your staff member has said something that the client shouldn't see. You can go through and modify those notes. Another line item type is fixed amount, so you can say I don't really care what the progress is through the phase, but I really need $2,000 right now. The system will automatically calculate the progress for you, and if you wanted to, you could copy the description above and paste it in here, and it'll work exactly the same. You'll notice these line item types on the side here, and this is so we can know which items we want to track against the agreed fee and which ones we don't. So we could say these timesheet entries are actually variation work. You'll notice the percentage progress go down as we change those values. There's also an expense line item. All that is the same as the fixed one, except it'll default the type to reimbursement. And there's also a note. So this is basically a blank line item, but you can't really add headers and footers and things to your invoice in Xero. So this is basically a way for you to add extra information if you want. So you could say billing between dates, and that will just come in as a blank line item in Xero, and you can use that to describe various information throughout the project. If you scroll all the way down to no phase, you can start to see the expenses from the project being brought in. This is due to the invoice being created after the dates of those expenses. If there's anything missing, you can hit the sync expense button. You can use that to pull in expenses you don't see in the invoice. Once that's all done, you can save it, and it's going to ask you if you want to modify the timesheets which are attached to this invoice, so we can mark them as invoiced, so you can create a report in the future which shows you all uninvoiced timesheet items, and you can continue to bill the client for that. You can also lock timesheets, which will stop staff from modifying invoice time entries, and that way you've got an accurate record of what's happened in the past. So we'll do that. We'll save the invoice. If you do accidentally lock some timesheets that you want to continue editing. There's a little unlock icon here so we can see we can't edit these values. So you can just unlock it like so. And only admin staff have the power to lock and unlock timesheet entries. So that's the basics of invoicing. Next up, we'll run through integrating them with your accounting systems.